You need to be delusionally optimistic. Negative thinking poisons your brain and leads to cognitive decline, whereas positive thinking and gaslighting yourself into thinking everything is amazing actually makes your life amazing too. You must be a silly goose. And that is a tweet by an account called Carnivore Aurelius, who is referencing a study that looked at 400 plus older adults aged 60 and older in community settings and was trying to determine whether repetitive negative thinking and cognitive decline were associated, and found out that yes, they absolutely are. And especially in older adults in this community set, that's what they were testing for. But I thought it was a really funny tweet, because in order to be in the real estate business, in some ways, you really need to be what do we call it? Delusionally optimistic. You really need to have that attitude in some cases, because
that plucky,
it's a tough business. The failure rate is 75 to 80% of people that try this business are out of this business within 3 years, because it's tough. We are constantly dealing with negativity from the general public about our profession, negativity about market conditions, negativity working with buyers and sellers when we're individually trying to help them sell or acquire property. But being caught into a negative, repetitive thought process really doesn't help you at all. And this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but I'm going to say it because I believe it.
Careful.
I think that whether you believe in some sort of higher power directing things your way, or you believe in the manifestation principle that you are what you think, whether you believe that is because your subconscious is directing you through programming or there's some universal higher power, it sort of doesn't matter, because it still works. When you think positive thoughts, you experience things in a positive way. And when I saw this tweet, it made me laugh because it took it to the next level. Like, not just positive thought, but delusionally you need to gaslight yourself into thinking everything is amazing and be delusionally optimistic, which might be why our stock market is doing what it's doing lately. But
more on that later.
And with that thought, welcome to House Einstein Podcast 118. I am Osman Parvez, and with me is Hamish Crab.
Howdy. Welcome. We missed you last week.
Not everyone can see you when you wave. Yes, we did miss you last week. Thank you so much for joining us. And I guess let me do the little run through quickly. We're trying to do this faster and faster, because for those of you that listen to this podcast every week, it's got to be a little repetitive.
It's getting there.
At the same time, I got to say these things. So our mission at the House Einstein Brokerage, which is our sponsor, is to help you make a smarter real estate decision. If you are thinking about buying or selling real estate, please visit houseeinstein.com and talk to your House Einstein advisor. You will see the team at House Einstein, and we are more than happy to help you. If you are a listener or a viewer of this podcast and don't have a business relationship with House Einstein, please do not make any real estate decisions based on what you hear here in this podcast. Please don't make any financial decisions. Please don't make any romantic or spiritual decisions either, because this podcast is entertainment, period. And with that, Hamish, let's talk about our topics today.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're dovetailing kind of in topics today. So we've had this due diligence episode beforehand, and I think we're getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty with it as far as what you can do to protect yourself before you even go under contract. And that's our closing table, is pre-offer due diligence. And I think Osman, you're of course going to be able to explain it a little bit better than I am, but it dovetails from a recent tale from the trenches where Osman went and viewed a property and noticed some things that I think to an inexperienced agent would not be immediately apparent. And the more Osman looked, the more it kind of unraveled, like a can of silly peanuts, or some sort of silly. It just kept getting worse. Anyway,
silly peanuts. I've never.
It's the magician thing where you open the can and then like a bunch of like springs come out.
Oh, is that like Albert? No, that's a joke. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like a spring-loaded puppet pops out of the can. Okay, got it.
That's the one.
Yeah. So
please carry on.
So that's our closing table topic. We're going to talk in detail but not cover it completely because you simply can't in a podcast. All of the different things you should be looking at before you write an offer. And then I will segue from that into Tales from the Trenches, which spawned that idea. And then we're going to talk about a market update, particularly for farm and ranch style properties and the type of research we've been doing for one of our clients. And then we're going to hit our sales of the week. We could talk about closed property because they are no longer active listings. For active listings, for discussion of active listings, the only place to get that is our newsletter, and you can sign up for the newsletter at houseeinstein.com. The properties we're going to talk about that have closed that we think are notable and worth discussing, there are lessons to learn from each of these: 601 Lincoln Avenue, 987 Estes Way, 5055 Ralston Street, Unit A, 1836 Larkspur Lane, and 5579 Moosehead Circle. And then we've got our little segment we call Shameless Self-Promotion, where we talk about a buyer or a seller or another client of ours that has something that they're on the hunt for or something that they are looking to market to you. So we're going to hit that really quick. And then we've got some news items. In the news, we're going to talk about the balance between buyers and sellers. Nationwide, there's an article Hamish found that I think is actually very interesting to discuss. We're going to talk about how the city council here in Boulder just decided to kill height limits for certain types of buildings. So no longer will they make it more difficult to build 55-foot buildings. They will make it easier if you are a certain type of building or a building that's intended for certain use. We're going to talk a little bit about the stock market and what the current highs might mean for our local market, and with some anecdotal evidence from what's happening in the Bay Area. And then the big news today, and by the time you hear this, it will no longer be big news because it'll be 2 days later. But today on Wednesday,
we'll be seeing the results maybe.
Maybe. We'll find out what actually happened. But today, May 13th, Donald Trump and company have landed in China and are having a big meeting with the Chinese government, along with a cadre of top CEOs who flew with Trump on Air Force One.
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss look, it's important to talk about some of these macro factors. I'm not pretending we're experts in political science, but at the same time, ignoring these macro factors and how they might impact our local real estate market and community is also ignorance. So we have to talk about some of these things too. So
it's pretty noteworthy. Yeah.
But it's pretty noteworthy. But I just want to mention, there are people that want us to stay in our lane, and that's just not how we roll. If it looks like it has impact, we're going to talk about it. And then we've got Carveouts, our Carveout section, which is stolen completely from the Acquired podcast. If you're not a listener of Acquired, you should be. It's really a joy. If you're interested in business history and how businesses came to be what they are, Acquired is a fantastic podcast, and it's great for long car rides. But they have a segment in it called Carveouts, where they go off topic completely on anything they want to talk about. And in my particular Carveout this week, I'm going to talk about what I did last week, why there was no podcast, what was I up to. I'm going to hit that. And Hamish, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about one of the largest reservoirs in the Denver metro area, Standley Lake. And I live near it. I want to talk about its recreation and what I've been up to and how I plan to use it this summer, aside from water.
Isn't it radioactive?
Oh, come on.
Like, if you look at that plume from the 70s.
Well, we'll get there when
Flats.
We carve it out, All
right,
Don't worry about it.
You're not eating the fish from Standley Lake, right?
I've seen some people do that. I'm not. No. Okay. But yeah, we'll dive into that. I wasn't going to be top of the mind as far as the topic goes, but I'll address it now.
You're the only person I know who owns a personal Geiger counter that's not affiliated with some research institution or academic setting.
Yeah.
So
no, and then I will say, if you're running short on time and you want to hear a specific segment or you want to see what we're talking about, in the description we have the time codes and links to most, if not all, of the things we're talking about, news articles, sales of the week, all that. So, without further ado...
I think it's pronounced adieu.
Adieu. Well, I got pet-a-terre wrong, so that's on me.
All right, I don't know how it's pronounced, but without further delay, let's jump into it. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. The closing table topic this week is pre-offer due diligence. And this is largely what we do when we are looking at property with our buyers. We are not there to sell them a house, push them into real estate. We are there to look at the property with them and point out things that become apparent to us based on our experience that the buyer should know about. And even before scheduling the showing, there's due diligence. Ooh, something just beeped. Have I got windows open? I'm going to close them.
I didn't hear anything for what it was worth.
I'm going to close them. Closing that window that beeped.
Internally.
So there are things that we look at even before we go, before we open the door, before we even reach out to showing time to schedule the showing. We are looking at the location,
right?
And screening for certain factors that could be deal killers right off the bat. And one of the most visible and obvious ones are yellow lines that an engineer has determined are helpful for this street because it gets so much traffic. Now, lately, this rule may no longer be applicable in the future because a lot of streets here in Boulder and in other communities in Boulder County have been removing the yellow line, because what we've discovered is that the yellow line actually creates a sense of safety.
Fast. Yeah.
And by removing it, you also remove the sense of safety. And so people drive slower when there's no yellow line and the street is narrower. And to slow traffic or calm traffic, they've been removing yellow lines. But it's a good indicator from an aerial photograph that this street could be pretty busy. Mm-hmm. And then we can also look at whether it's an artery or if it's an interior street. Like, how likely is it going to see lots of traffic? And some of our clients coming from big cities on the East and West Coast, or even down south, they laugh when we tell them that's heavy traffic. Yeah. But if you've lived in Colorado for a while, our traffic sensitivity, I think, is a little higher than East and West Coast cities. So we just want our clients to know that, hey, this is going to be a busy street. Another one
I would say, just before you jump past that, is like beyond, I guess, noise sensitivity, there's a reasonable difference in price and kind of like as quickly as the home jumps off the market to its proximity of these streets. So even if you're not sensitive to it down the road, right, we're also screening for the resale value too.
We're screening for the resale value because someday hopefully we've done such a great job, you're going to call us when you want to sell the property and you're going to say, hey, Osmond, we'd like you to list the house. And at that point, I don't want to have to say to you, well, I never mentioned this to you, but it's a busy road, so it's going to take longer to sell, and it's not going to get as much money as home two houses further in. So it's important for agents to be really honest with their clients when they're buying, so we're not caught off guard when we're selling. And it's not just about traffic that's out your front door; it's also traffic that's within a certain distance from the house, because as we continue to learn in this industry, air quality is closely associated with heavy traffic nearby. All of that dust and all of that rubber particles and exhaust fumes from these vehicles in a constant stream wafts over. And I think our new rule of thumb is it 500 feet, Hamish, is what we decided is a reasonable rule of thumb, that if it's closer than 500 feet, you may want to just pause and ask yourself, are you okay with that? There's also prevailing wind directions that can impact that too. So there's that factor. And a third one is the if it's on a curve. Because the properties that are on the inside of a curve, meaning that the front of the lot is narrow and the back of the lot is wide, have a greater sense of privacy in the backyard and have really nice, big, luscious backyards. But if you're the opposite, where the front of the house is wide and the back of the house is narrow, it feels the opposite. It can feel like you have no privacy in the backyard, which is where most people hang out with their families outdoors, and you have far less yard space. So homes that have smaller backyards than front yards sell for less money, take longer to sell, and are less desirable. And that I don't need to find a study for this, okay? I don't even know if there is a study for this. But I could tell you after 20 plus years, 22 years in this industry, Buyers prefer the one that is the wide yard in the back, not the narrow yard in the back. And if it's and there's degrees of extremeness, of course, to this too. But as a general rule, we want to bring it up before we even schedule the showing that this could be a privacy issue, because we'd rather not be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so even before you've scheduled the showing, that's the type of stuff your agent should be doing for you and help guiding you, because it's a huge waste of their time and your time to see property that should have been disqualified before the showing. But then once you're at the property, from the moment you're walking up to the curb, you're forming an impression. But it shouldn't just be about the pretty flowers and the doormat and the yellow colored door, right? It should be about other things, like how does the roof line look? Is the roof line relatively square, or does it look like there are things that could be lurking there? Like we've seen roofs that have bows and ripples in them, or have severely degraded,
like proper valleys. Yeah.
Valleys, right? Or degraded shingles, or signs of problems just on the walk up. The foundation itself, we always do a walk around. If our client says, hey, this looks like it might be the one, we're walking around the property and looking as closely as we can. We're also looking inside the house for signs of water damage, and there are a lot of them, right? Like if it was involved in the flood of 2013 here in the city of Boulder, which a lot of houses with basements got water damage, then typically we see new trim, we see newer electrical, and if you can find a room that has unfinished spaces so you can see the studs, you can see whether or not there's water damage on the studs and whether that was treated or not. And in some cases you can see the flood cut and the difference in age between the drywall pieces. Also a telltale sign is, guess what? Now there's a new sump pump, because prior to 2013 they didn't have one, and after 2013 the pain of that water mitigation, mitigating the water damage, they're like, yeah, let's cut a hole in the floor and throw in a sump pump, because that would have saved our bacon in 2013.
Yeah.
All of those are signs that we look for, and they're not necessarily deal killers. But if it looks like
eyes wide open,
eyes wide open. If it looks like there's been mitigation for a flood in the basement, we want our client to know that. And if they have a high degree of sensitivity to mold, maybe we shouldn't go any further with this house, or maybe we should plan for a mold test during the inspection at a minimum, to make sure that there isn't an ongoing mold concern happening with this property. We typically recommend a mold test anyway, but when it comes to a home that shows signs of water damage, well, now we
have
really
reason to, right?
We have a greater reason to suspect. In the basement, our nose is usually the best indicator, but this is going to sound a little bit...
Oh, that one's tough too. Go ahead.
It's going to sound a little sexist or genderist or something, but my experience is that women have more sensors for this. They can smell at a higher level than I can smell. And I know biologically women have more cones and rods, and they can see more color distinctions. So they have my sense is that my understanding is they have a higher sensitivity. And I've seen this over and over again, where when I'm with a cisgendered couple and we're looking at a house, and
she smells
me and the guys smell me and the guys smell nothing. And the woman involved in the transaction's like, oh, something smells off in this place. Now that's of course a generalization, and I want to add we work with everybody, okay, and we are radically in support of diversity. So don't take what I've said to mean we prefer any sort of.
You're done, buddy. You're canceled.
Canceled. I said.
Go ahead and clock out. Yeah.
No, I'm doing my best.
A challenge there too is like I'm very familiar with like the old basement smell, and there's a distinction, to me at least, between like old basement and musty old basement, and like you can smell the difference, but then it really, that one especially, I think when it comes down to kind of health issues and things like mold, it's like if you buyer are aware to this, or sensitive to these things, like by all means please go. I'm not going to push back and be like, doesn't smell like mold to me. Like if you're smelling it, that's that's your read.
Well, it's also, there are other telltale signs, like they have those horrible Glade plug-in fresheners trying to mask smells, but it's not always a case of there being a flood or mold issue, particularly in a basement. Sometimes showers or tubs have shallow P-traps. And if the house
Or
has been
leaking
vacant.
P-traps even. Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be far worse. But if it has a shallow one and it's a vacant property, there's a possibility the P-trap is dried. And what you're smelling are actually sewer gases that are coming back up from the city's sewer system, which is a relatively easy problem to solve. It's called open the windows, pour some water in the shower, and the problem goes...
Fill that P-trap up, yeah.
Fill the P-trap. And sometimes we had a listing like this. They had a little rubber cover for the basement shower because it was such a shallow P-trap, or maybe no P-trap, that they were constantly getting sewer gas smells coming up the shower drain. So is that a defect of the by the way, is that a defect of the property? I don't know. I don't think so, but it certainly was a factor that was very evident by leaving it for a few weeks, and suddenly you'd smell after a few weeks the sewer gas smell in the basement.
As a slight anecdote, the house that I ended up buying had for a while kind of a transient sewer gas smell to it, and it's it's been an interesting thing to figure out, but it hasn't been like a massive defect, and more or less it's like, okay, I snaked the drain and now we're good. Or like add a Studer vent, like kind of easier things. So, but eyes wide open, right?
Well, there are obvious signs of expensive problems, and it's not uncommon that the seller is willfully oblivious, because you'll get the seller's property disclosure and there's nothing on it that mentions these things, but our eyes tell us there's a problem.
And experience. No, we're aware of these because we've seen so many at this rate.
When I was in college, my dad came to visit, and we used to work in Albany, and so he took us to lunch, me and a friend of mine. And I'll never forget this experience, and I won't mention her name because I don't want to embarrass her. And at that lunch, my dad looked at her and said, "Do you have something going on with your thyroid?" And she was suddenly like instantly
Dad's a doctor, by the way, so some background.
What are you doing? And he's like instantly diagnosing because he can't turn it off. Mm-hmm. And it turns out she did have like hyperthyroidism.
Did she know, or did he like call it?
I don't know if she knew, but it turned out to be true that she had like bulging eyeballs, which I just thought was, a feature of her way she looked. Her eyes were a little bulgy. Yeah. And he immediately diagnosed it. And I'm like, okay, Dad, like that's a little embarrassing to diagnose.
Dr. House level stuff, like.
Yeah, and also, and then this is also somebody in our ethnic community, so there's a certain measure that the uncles and aunties take with people's children. There's like a certain measure of intrusiveness that is part of what we call desi or desi culture. And it was a little embarrassing for me, and I'm sure it was embarrassing for her, but he was actually right. And the point I'm trying to make is that when you spend years of your life, decades, looking at homes, or in this case, my dad looking at humans from a medical perspective, you see things just because they're visible and obvious to you because you've seen them so many times. And this is a story we're going to talk about in Tales from the Trenches, when agents who have a lot of experience pretend they didn't see a problem and say there's no known issues with this house. So let me keep going here. So there are other things, Hamish, that we're looking for. And here's one that is not obvious, right? But it's marketing that is emphasizing the open space and the views. And yes, it's true. You go to the property, there are incredible views. But those views are not protected, right? So for example, Anna's Farm, if you look at the history of all the properties on the west side of Anna's Farm, this is in Lafayette. It's a neighborhood I really like. It's very cute. It looks a little like the Truman Show. And you're on the west side of that neighborhood. A lot of those listings are going to talk about the views. Some of them are going to go so far as to say over open space, which is completely incorrect. And now guess what? Well, those chickens are coming home to roost because that development is in play. And in the next 2 years or so, it's going to break ground, and a lot of those views are going to be completely decimated by a massive new development going in on the west side of Anna's Farm. And this is the risk that people take if they don't do their due diligence. And before you write the offer, what your agent should be doing is pulling up a map and looking at a minimum to see who owns that property. And if it's owned by City of Lafayette or it's owned by Boulder County, you have a greater degree of confidence that it won't be developed. But that's not the end all. Like,
you didn't say certain degree, you said just greater degree, right?
You may need to go pull the conservation easements. And this is where our expertise stops. and we would connect you with an attorney or somebody at the municipal or government level that can give you better advice, because I can't legally tell you a conservation easement is going to protect you, but I can help you get the conservation easement and you can read it, but I can't play attorney. So I will read it and tell you what I think, but I'll caveat the hell out of that because we can't be responsible. And frankly,
That's usually enough for the buyers too that we've worked with. They're like, okay, like to this degree, we're going to work with it. But
right, we believe it is protected. So let's say, like on the first glance, so this is the difference between pre-offer and post-offer due diligence. Pre-offer, you see that it's owned by the county or the municipality, and there's an open space sign on it with trails. You can feel reasonably confident that that's open space. Once you're under contract, you want to check the conservation easements and maybe talk to the neighbors, because there have been cases in Boulder County where the neighbors thought this was not open space, or this was open space, but it was the housing authority that bought it. It wasn't the open space department.
Oh,
and they 100% planned to develop it. And now the county and the community are at odds. In Twin Lakes, in Gun Barrel, this was not that long ago. There were owls involved. There were angry neighbors, and eventually the county backed off. But as far as I know, the housing authority still owns that property there. So it's really important to educate yourself on the history of the property and the legal ways that the property is restricted, and also the direction that our political winds are blowing, which are towards reclaiming public land. Reclaiming public land for development. So you do the really detailed research after you're under contract. You do the sniff test before you write the offer, and in most cases, a simple lookup of the map will tell you at least whether it's owned by a municipal entity or owned by a private developer that says, we'll develop in the future, LLC. That should tell you where we're headed with this thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it comes down to the sticky point. Like, these are the things that we help with, but just as a quick aside, I guess I'm asking, you can say open space because it doesn't inherently mean city open. It just means the space next to the building is open. Right? Doesn't that, it gets really down into the weeds, so it's right? It's a sneaky one, or what do you think?
I think it's bullshit to call open space. To say it's open space when it's slated for development. I think it's totally wrong, and anybody that hides under that is disingenuous, right? They're looking for they're looking for something to protect themselves for having screwed up. And they should never have called that open space. Call it farmland.
Yeah.
Right? Because it has the connotation open space suggests that it's protected.
Rolling fields.
Over rolling fields, over farmland, over beautiful land, clear land. It doesn't matter what you call it, other than open space carries the connotation of legal protection.
It is it's so direct, like close to literal City of Boulder open space, right? Which is what I think, like you said, the connotation is where people's minds link it to.
That's right. And so I think it's disingenuous. And when you see agents describe in their listings that it's open space when it's not, I think that you're looking at an agent that either is ignorant or is willfully deceptive about what this property is and is trying to get it sold faster for more money, but doesn't really care about the buyer. They represent the seller, and they're lying about the actual nature of the adjacent parcel and the views. So whether views are protected or not, and what component of value should be assigned on those views. So even if the views are unprotected, there's still some value. Maybe you get that value for 3 years or 7 years or 10 years, and then that value goes away. But you need to at least understand that there is some value. What is that value to you over what timeline, and what is the probability of your views to being completely destroyed? And also, what's the cost to you emotionally and to your health to have a construction project next to you for the next decade? Which is probably what Anna's Farm is looking at.
Damn.
Right? Construction noise, dust, random people that are coming in and out of your neighborhood. And a lot of those dead-end streets that go east-west in Anna's Farm, there's a handful of them. Are those now going to run through? And if you look at the maps, I think some of them are. One of them looks like they're
dang designed to. Yeah.
Right. One of them looks like it's turning into a bike path, which is cool. But that also results in less privacy because now you have more people coming in and out on that street. It's just things that you need to understand before you write the offer to some extent. You need to make some educated assumptions based on what you see and the research you've done, and then you need to verify whether those assumptions are true or not before your contingencies expire. But there's no contingency in the Colorado-approved real estate contract that says, I don't like the development next door.
Yeah.
So this is the tricky part, right?
You
this
need
is
an
where
agent equipped to help you screen, right?
Well, this is where the real estate commission, it doesn't have a contingency for this. So it's a tricky one to navigate, and you should discuss that with your agent before we get ourselves into hot water about what to do. I'm not going to give legal advice on the real estate commission contract.
Reach out to your House Einstein agent
I'm going to
today.
say reach out to your House Einstein agent. But honestly, it's better to just not write the offer when you know there's development coming, right? And you don't want to deal with that. All right, so let's talk about some other pre-offer.
I would also, real quick, find it unlikely, considering how pro-development kind of the governing bodies are, that the real estate commission would put in an exit for that. Wouldn't you? Like, I feel like they'd rather not discuss it or not have it be a thing that they address because, I mean, build.
I'm going to radically disagree. I think the real estate commission's job is to protect the consumer and regulate the behavior of agents in order to protect the consumer. And I think that there should be an exit called "My neighbor's a Nazi. I don't want to buy this house."
That would
anymore.
be a nice one. Yeah.
or it turns out that there's there's going to be a waste treatment plant built in the backyard, or a new nuclear power plant. I didn't realize it when I wrote the offer, but there's now nuclear plants, and maybe you're fine with it, but you should have some exit in that. I think most agents would tell you that it's probably the broadest inspection objection is what you should use for that, because it gives you the most latitude for any reason to terminate. Buyer's sole subjective discretion is very clearly written there, but I don't think that they were thinking that applies to the neighborhood. I think they were thinking that applies to the house. And so if you choose to use that as an exit, know that you are potentially risking a claim of that you were acting in bad faith and that we're going to claim your earnest money. So just be really careful if you're going to choose to use those things, and get advice from your actual agent, not from some random podcast you heard. And if you'd like to hear what we have to offer in terms of our services, visit us at houseeinstein.com. But this podcast is not establishing a relationship with anybody hearing it. Period. Nope. Okay, great. Let's talk about a couple of other things. Let's talk about a couple of other things that you should be looking for in your pre-offer due diligence at the showing. Poor quality DIY. Like, this is a huge red flag. And the listing I'm about to talk about in Tales from the Trenches had a bunch of this. Before we discovered the real question mark on this property, we saw a whole bunch of not so great remodel and DIY quality that in some cases was slightly better than most, but not really, right? Like sloppy work in the DIY remodel. And that poor workmanship is an indicator of other potential issues that could be lurking. So all of that is pre-offer due diligence, right? That's before you wrote the offer, you should be having an honest conversation with your agent, and your agent should be pointing out these things because you're not the expert, but they are. They see houses day in and day out. In theory, this is what they're licensed to go do, but most of the real estate attorneys will tell the agents that you should not be commenting at all about due diligence or anything that could potentially be construed as inspection issues with a property. Because if you walk into a basement and you say, wow, this place looks great, and then 2 weeks after closing, the plumbing breaks, the buyer potentially could come after you as an agent for saying, hey, this house looks great. So this is one of the reasons why House Einstein, which is built from a very different business model than most brokerages, we have language in our buyer agency agreement that very clearly says, your agent's going to do their best to help, but we are not legally liable for buyer's due diligence, and it's not a normal duty of a real estate agent to a buyer here in the state of Colorado. And you have to acknowledge that to help protect us. But the attorney said, that's not a great idea, Osmond. You really shouldn't build a business around helping people make smarter real estate decisions. And I said, absolutely not. We are building a business around helping people make smarter real estate decisions. So come up with some language. And so they did.
You're doing it.
We're doing it because why are you paying a commission? for opening the door. I mean, so that's
Oh my
that's
gosh,
not
this house is
commission worthy.
gorgeous. Like,
Right? We're talking about how good you look in a house.
Yeah.
You're paying for advice. You're paying for
Right.
negotiation expertise. And you're paying for somebody who is advocating for you throughout the transaction. And it's really hard to do that if you're not able to actually point out defects in the property, or that you think the house is a great buy, that the quality is fantastic. So let's now segue from this. Boy, I feel like I'm talking very fast and animated, but I think
well,
it's
I think it's
better
going to be
than-
an enjoyable listen. Yeah.
I hope so. All right, so that's our closing table topic. Now let me segue right to what inspired this closing table topic. And
So, really quick, you had said that, am I to understand this correctly? This agent you know and is experienced, and so should have been able to identify these things? That's all the...
I don't know these agents.
Okay.
And I don't know their experience level. And I sometimes assume that you get a listing because you were either an experienced agent or the seller trusts you because they have a personal relationship with you outside of this real estate transaction. They know you, your cousin, your family friend. They think you're competent because you hung your license with a well-known brokerage, which lends a belief. It's a little shine that comes to you for having had your license with a well-known brokerage. So that's how people sometimes get listings, but it's not always an indicator of experience. I assume that they have some level of experience because most people aren't going to have somebody who just got their license to handle their listing of a property that could be a multi-million-dollar transaction. So anyway,
Yeah.
let's go into this with this particular
please.
house. And at the request of my client, we reached out to these listing agents, there's 2 of them, and asked them if they know of any defects with the property. And I don't usually do that, to be quite honest, because I just assume they're not going to tell you anything, right?
Right.
Like that.
They're supposed to, right? Proactively disclose, but...
Which means without being asked. They're supposed to tell buyers and their buyers' agents, which is how information is communicated to buyers, of known defects with the property. And the longer you've been doing this, the more likely you are to be aware of these defects. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe through an experience they didn't realize these were problems. And what we found at this showing started okay, right? Like on the walk into the house, it was pretty clear. The first thing I noticed is there's paint overspray and there's painted brick that is showing the underlying color through the brick. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they thought this is kind of a look, right? Like a sponged on, faded look. Maybe that's what they decided.
Yeah.
And then I noticed the overspray and I realized that's probably not the case. And also the color choice was a little bit, I would say, a little unpopular. I'm not going to mention, I don't want to, look, we're not going to mention the address of this property because real estate agents are not allowed to dish about, to describe active listings in a negative way. We're not allowed to be critical of active listings. So this is an active listing, and I'm not going to share the address because I don't want somebody coming after me and complaining to the real estate commission that I was dishing about this house. But I'm dishing about this house without mentioning the address because I want buyers to understand of when to walk or even run from a potential listing. And so at the walk-in, the paint job was the first thing we noticed. But then we walked in, and it didn't look too bad. There's a little bit of a funky smell inside, but it smelled kind of like spices
So like
or
new
something.
materials? Or okay.
It's like almost like just a funky but not horrible smell. And then we got into the kitchen, and the quality of the kitchen remodel actually looks pretty good. And the quality of the remodel on the upper level bathroom actually looks pretty good. And later we learned that was done before the current owner. Like if you look at the old listing, that work was already done. Okay, so then we go into the basement. And hold on, let me back up. While we're on the upper level, I made sure to point out a couple of things. The age of the windows don't match. Some of the windows have been replaced, some of them have not. That's just a good data point. And then the big functional problem with this house is the closets are weirdly small. Like really small for this era. I'm like, and there's no easy fix for the closets. You have to steal some space from
That's
one of
always
the
a
two bedrooms.
difficult one.
And it's not a big house. It's very similar to your house, Hamish. So then we go into the basement. And this is where things start to look weird. Like the quality of the work in the basement looks extremely DIY. Like the workmanship on the drywall looks looks questionable, right? Like the finish quality, it's not
even the
orange
texture
peel.
and
It's spatuled on very inconsistently and sloppily. It doesn't look like
that's a style.
You're in Italy and that's a style. It looks more like this
no
is just
Southwestern
somebody
Adobe. Yeah.
who's learning as they're going, right? There's a drop ceiling, there's fluorescent tubes, and the fluorescent tubes, like the film that is covering the fluorescent tubes, which is a piece of plexiglass, is drooping because it's so old and unsupported. So you see the bare tubes hanging out, and then
Sweet.
And this is something there's some weirdness, right? Like the walls are inboard, the concrete walls move in, right? And it's very strange looking, and I'll come to that at the end of this, what that was about. So like, okay, this is kind of weird. There's some
So they're
features...
unfinished walls? Like you could see
but you could see that what's been like the walls have like right about hip height. There's an inboard wall.
Oh,
Actually,
right. Okay.
Yeah, right about hip height. But we'll come back to that because that's really not a red flag. It's just it matches up with what we learned later with the history of the house. So there's an inner hip wall of concrete, which was strange. And then there's some other weird features that I don't really know what to make of, but the quality difference between upstairs and downstairs is night and day. It very much looks like handyman special downstairs at best, and more likely the homeowner did it. And then there's a cutout for the walkout. And this is a walkout that's not on a steeply sloping lot. So it's a flat level lot with a walkout. And then there's a big excavation. So we open the door to the walkout, and you can see the decks above, and there's at least I would say 8-foot excavation, maybe 9 feet to get to grade. And it's a big excavation. But we don't go out from there. We come back out and then go, because we have to put on our shoes. I don't want to track onto this, what looks a little muddy, onto the concrete at the walkout. I want to put back on our shoes. We go back outside. We check out the outer deck, which is nice. And then we go down into the walkout. And as I'm walking down, I notice, okay, there are some serious issues that are starting to become apparent. There's salt stains all over the cinder block from efflorescence, which means moisture has pushed through and salts have come out of the cinder block itself.
Yeah,
and then I noticed there's a cracking going down one of the cinder block walls. And then I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then like it's damp smelling and musty, and there's a big pile of mud in the middle of the floor, and there's a sump pump pit that you lift up the cover, it's full of water. And there's no system to pump water out. There's just a hole or a pit with a cover on it. And then I look left, and there's a sump pump just sitting there, tucked in behind the door. And I was like, that's okay. So I'm like, what is the story?
It's a manual.
And I'm looking at the finish quality of this cinder block excavation. So typically when these things are constructed, they are constructed with steel reinforced concrete. And they are designed and engineered to withstand the pressure of the excavation for a very long time, right? And instead, we're seeing hydrostatic pressure pushing moisture through, cracking in the cinder block, which was not necessarily the best choice of material. I did ask AI.
They do use it, but cinder blocks are foundations. Yeah,
you can build foundational walls, but they're better with vertical loads. Right? They work great with vertical loads, but an excavation in damp ground is going to have horizontal loads. And we don't have any idea of the engineering that's hidden in the dirt, right? Maybe there's more to this than a single cinder block wall, but it's clear the space is getting wet, and it's clear there's no permanent system for evacuating water or pumping water out of that pit. Instead, the owner just literally plugs in an extension cord and a hose
as needed,
and drops it in, which is great, except if you're traveling for a month or two at a time and there's a heavy rain, you're going to have a swimming pool down there. And it's a swimming pool that within 2 inches is now entering the walkout basement, right? It's only a couple of inches below, if that, if any, being generous, right? It's a walkout without a step. So remember, this is also the listing I asked is, are there any known issues with this property? And they had said no. And I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they just didn't know. But this is clearly something that if I was the listing agent, I would, at a minimum, I would have advised them install a permanent and proper pumping system for this, because this looks bad. and it's going to come up on inspection, and you can either deal with it now proactively, or you can wait till it comes up on inspection and hope for a dumb buyer that didn't know. And an inspector's going to call this out right away. Go ahead, Amos. You're about to say something.
And you looked at like permitting too for this, right? And it was just non-existent.
Okay, so this is in a jurisdiction where I can't look up the permits. And I have to ask city staff to look up the permits, which I did. And city staff eventually emailed me the permits. And it's unfortunate because I can't quite read the permits that they sent.
It's like a bad photocopy.
The scans are really bad. Hold on, let me look at the scan again.
And also, while you're looking, at least, it could genuinely be an experience thing for this listing agent, and that, I mean, not to like toot our own horn, but it is a direct example of experience being able to identify issues and help you better with your pre-offer due diligence when you select an agent that kind of knows what they're looking at without even knowing what they're looking at. Like, I think we're getting to this point. We were looking at Dunning-Kruger a few episodes back. And there's the you don't know what you don't know, but then there's also the you're so experienced that you forget that other people don't know these things. And it's almost like we're kind of in that range, and like we expect it to be obvious and evident to some other people, but I think Osmond, you're experienced too. You're like, well, yeah, that's obviously bad. But listing agent's like, what do you mean? It's cement. How can it be bad? It's cinder block.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll tell you what they sent me.
Yep.
And there's an application for a building permit from 1988, and it says
feels like the original.
Describe work, and the work says basement under existing house. So now I understand why there are stub walls or hip walls that go in, because I think what happened is that they excavated the basement under the existing house and dug a new basement in 1988. So that's the application. And in it, I can't quite read it. There's
if it's a 1980s copy, it's got to be.
Well, I mean, people
damn near legible.
That lasted okay, but it says.
Yeah.
So project valuation $8,000 with $50 of electrical work, and it says follow egress recommendation use, and then I can't read the rest of it. Something stairs, 9-inch minimum, something run. Wired something detector requested. It's very different. So I emailed the person who looked this up for me back, and I said, can you please rescan this? But there was a permit granted the next day after the application that says basement under existing house. And then there's some special conditions that are typed, but again, very faint. It says follow engineer's recommendation, use something during construction, 36 inches wide, 8-inch maximum rise. And then there's other things, something about a detector and something about all heights.
Yeah.
So it's possible that the excavation was permitted, but I sure would like to read what those recommendations. I'd like to read the whole thing, and I can't. And it's also very hard for me to believe that they were able to get all of that work done for $8,000 in 1988, but maybe it was possible.
Just for inflation, I'm thinking too. It's just curious. Sump pump 1980, and then to have continued to keep that drainage of that walkout for, I mean, what we're 46 years now using a sump pump. Like, I don't know if that's the same permit.
There's right. I don't know if it's the same permit either. So it doesn't matter whether or not. I mean, it does matter. Okay, it's a litmus test. Yes, there's a permit. No, there's not. It doesn't change the fact that clearly there's a drainage issue. There's wet cinder block. There is a hole that's full of water, and there's a jerry-rigged, MacGyvered solution for getting that water out of here, which is called you physically put in a sump pump every once in a while when it's full of water, and if you're lucky, you're home when it floods, right? Like, that's the solution. And so I was so frustrated that I created a little video about this property.
Linked in the description.
Which is linked in the description, and you can watch it. Because if I'm, like, I recommended we don't buy this house, right, to my client. And they thought about it, and they are now in the same position. Let's not buy this house. Because maybe it's going to cost $10,000 to fix this issue. Maybe all it needs is a pump and some PVC and some wiring, which could be a $2,000 problem. maybe it's that cheap to fix this problem, but it could also be really expensive, and there are definitely signs of cracks in the cinder block. So you may just be dealing with a huge problem. Like, the worst case is, let's call it $50,000 to excavate all of that, demo the existing cinder block system. Re-pour new concrete, like a box, and properly install. Maybe that's a $50,000 problem, or maybe it's a $2,000 problem, or if you're handy like Hamish is, maybe it's a $500 problem.
Well, brother,
but
I don't know. I think I'm going to fall into this house's camp when I sell my house.
Well, at the end of the day, there's this question, do you want to take that risk? And for my buyer, the answer was no. And so we have not written an offer on this property. And the best I can do from this experience is to create some content from it. So we're going to talk about it in the newsletter, and it's obviously in this podcast. And it's also, there's a little piece of video which will literally show you what we were looking at, and also why our client decided to walk away from this potential house, despite it being in a great location. It's a great location. You can't fix the closets, right? So that's something I really, even if you could fix the excavation, fixing the closets means stealing space from one of the 2 bedrooms, or you're doing an addition at some point, because these closets are the smallest I've ever seen for this style of house. Okay, so that's our... Do you have anything to wrap up, Hamish, on this? Any last thoughts?
I think that's about it. It was cool to get like the more details on the cinder block and everything. I'm doing a lot of temporary fixes in my home, and working to make sure that I don't end up in this type of position when I go to sell mine, if I ever do sell. But it is like, as a DIYer, like, I'm like, yeah, you could have done that a lot better. But then I'm also like, man, maybe my drywall is going to be kind of cruddy because I've got some drywall work coming up. But we'll see. I'm just more or less just relating it to my things. But
I mean, sometimes a DIY solution is fine, right? Like, we have water coming off the back of the house, and we have the previous owner installed cheap green plastic extension tubes from the gutters to get it to where the ground slopes off. Well, we have a hot tub there now and a sidewalk that goes to it. And our concrete guy threw down 2 tubes to go underneath the sidewalk.
Oh, sweet.
And it's visible. You can clean it easily. And I recently got rid of the green extended, accordion style plastic gutter tube.
Yeah.
Because it keeps breaking, and we're in a high wind
environment.
That
stuff gets eaten in UV. Yeah.
It's like 2 years. You're lucky if that stuff lasts. So I went with hard PVC and 3-inch to 2-inch soft clamps, and then stuck the hard PVC through little cinder blocks. And now it's not going anywhere. But it's also a DIY solution. But it's a DIY solution that actually works and is in reasonable condition and can be serviced, because you can take it apart, clean it like every couple of years if it gets clogged or whatever. It's a workable solution. So DIY is not always bad, but it takes somebody with some experience to ask, is this just... Like, there's DIY for gutter extensions, okay? And there's DIYs for like complete kitchen remodels or basement refinishes. And if there are visible and obvious signs of shoddy work, what's hidden where you can't see it?
Yeah. That's a good point. And there's also, like, if you are DIYing, you can always document it, unless you're afraid to, however it goes. Because if there is that question, and you're like, here's actually pictures where I added more insulation than what's required by code, or yada, yada, yada. Like, the finish can be refinished, but behind it, I actually went above and beyond, or however it goes.
Right. Yeah. Why did you do what you did? If you've documented it, you could take away a lot of the risk. The key thing to understand is that with risk, there's a relationship to price or cost. And if you take risk off the table for the buyer, you increase the value of the property, because the buyer feels more confident and will pay more for less risk. And if you increase risk with all sorts of shoddy hidden work, and you expect a buyer to pay a premium for it, you're likely going to be disappointed. And because of the price point of this house, I think it'll still sell, but I sure hope the people that are buying it know what they're getting into. Because it won't be my client.
Being delusionally optimistic, I hope that they get themselves a great home and it works out perfect, and none of that was the case, but I think we're on the better safe than sorry.
Well, I also hope the listing agent learns something from this, because this type of system should have been installed before the listing went live. And this is one of the reasons why when people say, Osmond, we'd like you to list our home, one of the first things we do is we schedule a meeting to document the condition of the property. And that's so we can give advice to the client about how to prepare it for sale. And if there are visible and obvious things to us as experienced agents with collectively over 40 years of experience, then we can tell them, and they can get the issue remedied under their own timeline with their contractor, not under the pressure of an inspection, objection, and resolution process, which some buyers will use to leverage excessive concessions because they believe now's the time to claw back on the price they don't like, instead of being honest about things they saw. That's a whole nother topic. But that often happens. So it's better to be proactive with listings than wait for things to come up on inspection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely times where we'll visit a place and be like, you guys, you're going to need to get that sorted before we list it.
Well, I really hope the listing agent fixes it, right? Like, get this fixed, because I'm not the only agent, I'm sure, that's looking at this and being like, ooh, don't buy this house.
Tea leaves, yeah. Okay. Let's keep marching on. I mean, we're doing well on time. I might want to take a quick break in a little bit, but...
Well, why don't we take a break right now? This week, we're going to dive into market conditions in a little different way. Rather than read you some data analysis from the MLS, I'm going to actually talk about work we've been doing for a specific client. And this is a longer term project, but we have a client who likely has a house to sell in Boulder and would like to acquire a property that is what I consider kind of farm and ranch style, or hobby farm, or horse property. These are not massive agricultural production properties, right? We're not talking about thousands of acres in the Midwest. We're talking about anywhere from a couple of acres to maybe even 35 to 40 acres of land. And there are all sorts of considerations for these types of property, starting with water. And water has been, well, as I said to him, I wouldn't buy property like this if I wasn't confident about it having water. Dryland farming works in a wet year, but with climate change, increasingly having secure water is going to be valuable. And valuing water rights is not our expertise, but it will be part of our due diligence together. When you put something under contract, we need to make sure that the value we've assigned to the water rights as part of this transaction actually passes the sniff test. So for research, what we're looking at is property with water that is in Boulder County that could support having a few horses. And then if it happens to have fields that are farmed, it may not necessarily be my client that's doing the farming. In fact, it's probably rented out to a tenant farmer. But that will give you the ag exemption on your property taxes. And the difference can be night and day for the affordability and the value of the property. So water rights, whether or not you can actually farm it. And then we're looking at not just the house itself, but ag buildings like horse barns and arenas. All of this has value. And then the normal things that you typically look for with a property, like views and other site-specific factors, like are you far enough back from the street? We recently passed on a property that's on Nelson Road. I won't say any more, but the issue with that property was, the biggest issue that is going to be very difficult to fix was the distance from the road. It was way too close to the house. So the house was interesting, not amazing, but the house was acceptable, but way too close to the road. So, and there was no barn. So now you're factoring in, okay, putting in a barn, because having space for the horses is what really matters for our client. The farmland that you can then get the ag exemption on is an entirely different aspect to it that isn't personally beneficial, but emotionally is beneficial, right? Like you have these views over your land that somebody else is, harvesting the grasses on and the hay on. So what I found in starting to do this research is that there are way too many variables to do the gold standard analysis for how these properties trade. And the gold standard is matched pairs. Do you know what matched pairs are?
I was going to ask, actually.
Okay.
Please.
So the way the S&P 500, the way the S&P Case-Shiller index It used to just be the Case-Shiller. Now it's, I think, owned by Standard & Poor's. The S&P Case-Shiller Index is the gold standard for real estate valuations over time. And what they do is they pull up what are called matched pairs. So they have a time series, and they look for the same property transacting 2 or more times within that time series. And they can then assign an annualized appreciation rate on the basis of that. So, for example, we would look at the last 60 or 90 days of sales, and then we would go look at the last 10 years and see how many other transactions occurred for this property. And then because we're not doing this for an entire country, much or even a region, we would want to do some adjustments on the basis of were there improvements made. So back when I worked on Nantucket, I did a matched pairs analysis for my old boss. Hi, Alan, if you're listening. But he is where I discovered this approach, right? He's the one that directed me to do this research. And we were only looking at land on Nantucket. You couldn't look at houses because it was too difficult to quantify the improvements that were made in each transaction. Like you buy a house and you put $500,000 into it, well, then you can't do the appreciation rate unless you adjust for the $500,000. And we don't know what they put into it. We just know it was improved. So the cleanest are properties that have no improvements or properties that are pure land. There are, that's, and I guess I should say improvements are also another way to describe structures. What I mean is no remodeling or additions, I should be careful, or you want land without improvements, meaning no structures. Those are the two that you should be looking for to try to get a baseline for appreciation. And my thesis is that property that is either a buildable lot or is a house over time with water rights and has ag possibility or potential should see an escalation in value above the baseline for the county. Like these are, I think, very, very attractive properties. Although lately with the mandated hourly wage going into effect in Boulder County, a lot of farmers are struggling and are going to likely go out of business because of that, because they can't afford to continue to farm in Boulder, at least farming that is labor intensive. So. So that's the analysis I started doing, but the problem is that there isn't enough data and there's way too many variables with these lots to do a matched pairs analysis. So now you're forced into what we call it's a qualitative analysis, which is something that
a lot more messy in my
it's very
I'd
messy.
Expect. Yeah.
It's very messy. But the end goal is for the client to feel well-educated and also for us to feel well-educated. So when the right property appears on the market, we have a really good sense of its value. And if it's overpriced, we're not offering that. If it's underpriced, we're moving faster. And so that's the type of thing that's very, very valuable for us and our client to understand. And it's challenging. The only way to do it is to look at all the old sales, let's say since 2020, which is what I sent him this morning, and then look at what the active listings are and go see the active listings so that you are both benchmarking your personal value meter on the data from the past, looking at the photos, looking at the water rights, looking at how many acres it is, looking at what we can discern from the listing. Take it all with a grain of salt because listing agents will pimp up a property, right? Like they're trying to sell it. So you have to dial down the hyperbole a little bit in the listing language.
Go through the path.
You can see the quality of the barn. You can see the quality of the house. And then you're looking at new listings. You have to go see them in person to get a sense of what's right and what's wrong with these listings. And over that time period, and maybe it'll be 6 months or a year, this client will get really well educated on where is their value and where is there not relative to their specific situation. But one thing I discovered is, way too many variables, right? But you can kind of start to group these sales that have occurred since 2020 or even further back. But I was just looking at 2020 and newer. And they seem to fall into a couple different categories. The first and highest value is the ones that have been completely renovated or have a new home on them. And then you can ask yourself, is that really my renovation taste or not? Sure, that's true. But you could at least see that the ones that are completely renovated or substantively, large additions, brand new homes, they typically sell for a premium and they typically sell a little faster. So we're talking about much higher value houses. And then the next category, and this is the biggest category, are homes that are dated. They need an update or a renovation. Like they clearly look like the last time somebody worked on the kitchen was in the 90s, right? Like it's looking like sitcoms
original structure kind of, yeah.
Well, not just, I mean, often the structure is original, but the interior has not had any updates in 30 or 40 years. That's the biggest category of what I saw. And then the next category, there's a few of these, are just the house is completely at the end of its useful life. It has had so much deferred maintenance. Nobody's taken care of it for decades. And basically, it's a tear down. So even though you potentially could live in the house, for most people that can afford this type of property, right, we're talking about a multi-million-dollar property, they're probably just going to assign negative value to the house because it's not about the house. They're going to tear it down and build a newer one, which in which case you're also looking at how much, what does the septic support? Does the septic support a 4 or 5 bedroom house? Or are you also going to be redoing the septic and leach field to support a larger house? Will the county even grant you that, which it usually will in farmland, but not a guarantee? Like that's another piece of due diligence you need to do. And then the last category, so this is the fourth one, is vacant land. But the vacant land needs to either have a lot.
That's right.
Built, it needs either a buildable lot determination letter, or it has to be 35 or more acres. So one of those two. So if it's in a subdivision where there are multiple lots that have been created with a legal authority to create those, then you probably can build a house there. But if it's just out in the open space in unincorporated Boulder County, then it needs
35.
a lot. 35. Yeah. Well, anywhere in the state is true. If it's unincorporated, you need 35 acres. That passed in, I think, 1979, way before you and I were in real estate. But that is the letter of the law. So those are the 4 big categories, and then we're looking at these groupings individually. We're looking at 150 something listings to try to understand what's going on with this market. And it's a super interesting analysis. There's no easy way to do it other than it's time consuming. We could do it together on a video call into those 4 categories, and then we go into the next phase. Okay, when you're looking at these individual listings, we are looking at the view quality, because some of these listings have like picture perfect view, like stunning view of the Flatirons and pastoral open space that's like Yellowstone fantasy house, right? Like you're like, I'm John Dutton, I'm gonna build my
picture.
Right, this is amazing. I want a big pickup truck and a cowboy hat. Like this is like the lifestyle I want and the fantasy I want, and it may or may not come to reality, but this is what's driving that view quality and the pastoral open space. But then the next question is proximity to major town centers like the city of Boulder, but it could also be Lafayette, it could also be Louisville, it could also be Hygiene or Longmont, because ultimately most people want to be within 15 to 20 minutes of a grocery store, right? Like you don't want to be driving 40 minutes to get to a grocery. So that's something to be thinking about as well as proximity. And of course, if you have the true Yellowstone fantasy house, you have kids who go to school, right? And you have ranch hands that want to go to the bar. So that all of this has got to be all about school districts and proximity to something, like town centers. And then the last piece, and this is the part that I will admit I'm not an expert in, okay? And that is soil quality.
Yeah, these ones are interesting.
Because some of these properties, if they've been supporting a tenant farmer for years, it's probably a safe assumption that can continue. But I don't know enough about agricultural practices and soil
or the
quality.
techniques that farmer used, right?
Right.
Because there's topsoil rejuvenation, all sorts.
Have they been rotating crops, and has this helped? I mean, I know the people to ask, having been on the board of Growing Gardens, who I would ask to consult. But we know we need to consult. Like of course the seller is going to say the soil's great. Of course the listing agent is going to say it's the best soil in the county.
I mean, there's dirt.
But now you need to bring in somebody who is an agricultural expert to actually opine on this, and those people are readily available, but you need to make sure you do that during the contract period. Like that's a safe assumption the soil's great if you have information that proves it, like a rental history for the last 20 years. But now the question is, who can you bring in to give you an opinion about the soil? Make sure you do that during the inspection period. And then this last piece, and this is another... Go ahead.
Quick sidebar. It's silt, sand, and clay are the 3 that make up soil. Or loam. It's one of those. Do you remember?
I do have an environmental science background.
I know.
I do have a biology degree, and I did study environmental science, Hamish. But did you just not hear I'm not an expert in this?
No, I know. I'm just trying to remember. There's like the 3. Anyway, okay. Carry on. Sorry.
Right. I mean, I just said I don't know what I'm talking about with soil quality.
Yeah.
I know enough to maybe have slight amounts of danger, like to ask good questions.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
I mean, and that's surface level even then, right? Like, I'm sure you want to go into like soil pH and so much more,
well,
but I was
also,
just
I mean,
curious. Yeah.
like everything else we do, it starts with use your eyes.
Hmm.
Is this a pockmark apocalypse landscape filled with prairie dogs and nothing else growing there? Or is this fertile farmland that's full of green and shows agricultural equipment that is in good working order, and they have a rent roll that shows you agricultural receipts? Do they have those things? Because if it looks like an apocalypse prairie dog town, I wouldn't believe them when they said it's got good soil potential without further proof.
Yeah.
Plus, you have to plan for the apocalypse of the prairie dogs too, because you ain't growing crops if it's full of prairie dogs.
If you've got, special wildlife or something too on your land, that's a whole nother level of due diligence that goes even beyond, you've got a rare aquatic species and you can't develop the land or farm it oh man. Yeah.
There's a good friend of ours who grew up on farmland, and he's really such a lovely human, but casually he mentioned having killed thousands of prairie dogs in his life. And that
gleefully,
it wasn't here in Boulder. They used to shoot prairie dogs as part of their evening activity because they are invasive and they were causing problems for the crops and they were causing problems for the livestock, and so they're fighting the prairie dogs. In Boulder, I could tell you, I've been to those meetings in city council where there's a line of people that are here to protest our prairie dog
survival of the prairie
practices.
dogs.
And boy, Boulder gets really comically, it's like a Portlandia episode where people are in prairie dog outfits, like it's out of control. And I get it, they're super cute. Okay,
I don't know if they're a keystone species or not, or I know they're native. I don't think they're protected.
Prairie dogs are a very sensitive thing in Boulder, and let me tell you, I think they're adorable. And I personally have never intentionally killed a prairie dog. I may have hit one on the highway, but I don't think I'm not even sure I've done that. But I have never personally killed a prairie dog.
Just covering your bases at this rate, yeah.
But I'm also a realist, right? Like, do you eat meat? Do you like to have cows not have broken legs when they're walking on the ranch land? Like, you need, like, prairie dogs are competing, they're competing for the resource. And so
if there's a cost to the environment, right, like if they're a keystone species, then maybe I'll keep them around. But otherwise, yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know enough. I know what a keystone species is because I studied them, but I don't think that they are. I don't know for a fact if they are. So it's not my area of expertise.
I mean, we're getting
As I said just a minute ago, Hamish, and you wanted to get into it. I don't know enough about soil or prairie dogs other than to know that it's important to do your due diligence, and it's important to handle these things with a degree of sensitivity to the community. But if you're buying something and you're putting a value on the quality of the soil or the tenant farmer staying, you need to go talk to the tenant farmer, and you also need to see the receipts, and you probably should consult with an expert on soil quality to understand that. And that brings us to our next topic of due diligence in this market update, and that is water value. And having been in this business for over 20 years, what I can tell you is that sellers always describe their water value rights as being really valuable, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of water value. But you as a buyer need to verify that, and you have to go beyond the ditch company, because the ditch company people also have a vested interest in pretending the value of the water rights are really high. So you can't trust, you can get information from them about the seniority of the water rights and the quality of the water rights, but then you need an independent consultation with somebody who is not tied to the transaction, not me. We have people we would recommend, and you can find somebody on your own. You don't have to choose our recommendation, who could at least give you an independent opinion on the value of that water. And if you think it's worth $300,000, it's worth a few $1,000s worth of your due diligence money to get a professional opinion about the value of the water. Don't skip that. And so so again, we're going to circle all the way back around to market update, research on ranch land. This is an interesting problem, because if you're just analyzing the same house in a subdivision, right? There's like a Martin Acres ranch, or a South Boulder ranch. There are so many of them that even after 50 years, 70 years, these homes have a consistency to their valuation. And you can make adjustments on location, backs to the park or not, how close to a busy roadway, but they're basically the same stamp repeat property. So the comparable sales analysis is relatively easy to understand valuation. And even then, as we just saw last week with an offer for our clients and the seller that says absolutely not, we base that offer on the comps and then paid a premium for some of the design features of that house. And we're still almost $100,000 apart on the seller's inflated sense of value for that South Boulder ranch. It doesn't even matter that the comps, like this,
The listing agent's response was pretty telling.
Oh, the listing agent's response was, I could argue the comps, but the bottom line is that
this is what the sellers want.
Willing to sell the property for. And if your buyers are not willing to pay that much, we understand. I'm like, okay, well, that's, we're not going to hug it out. We're $100,000 apart. But in that case, it's easy. That's a quantitative analysis. And then you can argue some of the finer points about views and location within the neighborhood and updates and design features and assign values and try to get your head around the valuation of the property. But for this project with hobby farms, horse property, it is so complex and there's so much to understand. And at the end of the day, this is what I discovered working for Republic down in Denver, that even if you've done your analysis, you've literally hired me to do the analysis for you. At the end of the day, after dozens of meetings, it's going to come down to your gut. Is this feel good or not? Is this really the right decision? And all of those meetings in your due diligence process and investment committee will not solve the gut feeling that most people end up making a decision on. And so what I actually say, it's not just gut. There's like centers of intelligence in the human body. There's the brain, there's the gut, there's the genital reason, okay? There are multiple areas of intelligence, and you really need to have alignment with those and trust your instinct when it comes to this is not
whole body yes.
The whole body, Oprah Winfrey, whole body yes is really important with real estate acquisitions, but you still need to do your due diligence. And also not look for confirmation bias constantly for what you already believe to be true. Like you have to be open to opposite opinions, and you want somebody, frankly, that's going to give you information that you disagree with, while you maintain a collegial, professional relationship, one that has kindness and professional respect of each other. Because often we are pitted there, where we're giving them info they don't want to hear. Right, like our client this week,
that's our wheelhouse.
Crawlspace, right? Like he wanted to hear, this is a great property, the price is right, jump on this. And I'm sorry, I want you to buy a house too. I'm not getting paid for this advice. I'm telling you, don't buy this one. It's a bad one. They're hiding stuff. So, okay, that's it for the market update.
I will say, you put ranch market research, and I was like, oh, cool, we're going to talk about like Martin Acres ranches. And then as it fleshed out, I was like, oh, okay, different ranch. Like, but.
Yeah, no, we're talking about real ranches. We're talking about horses and saddles and cows and pastures that people raise crops on. We're talking about water rights, water distribution on the land, ditch rights. How do you actually... as I learned recently, even though the water's there, how do you distribute the water? And is the equipment distributing the water in an efficient way? And there's also water storage.
That's true, yeah.
Right? Because most of these ditch companies don't want you storing water. And then there's a bunch of these ponds that are around that may or may not be legitimate water retention. So there's all of this. I mean, God, the rabbit hole is so deep. But it's also interesting. Like, I got to say, this is an interesting puzzle for us to help a client solve. And we're really grateful that he chose to do it.
It's scratching a curiosity itch, isn't it? Yeah. Especially because I think we both like the hobby farm thing and see ourselves with that kind of setup maybe down the road.
Someday.
Yeah.
Someday it's going to happen. Although I don't... Look, I have mowed so much lawn in my life. It used to take me 6 hours to mow my parents'
upstate
property on a riding mower, 6 hours. And I decided that, you know what? I don't ever want to do this as, an adult, but now I'm like, boy, a big tractor with a big white motor sounds like a great way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
Right. I'm thinking of the Yellowstone helicopter. That's really the, could do without everything else.
Yeah. Taylor Sheridan fantasy lifestyle. I'm down for. Okay, let's move on and talk about some sales of the week.
Oh, perfect. Got these in order for you. This first one, I try to link to like a syndicate website where the listing history and photos and everything will stay up for good. This one wasn't syndicated, so the link that we have is to Osmond's personal iRes, and you can even, I think, schedule a showing through it, but it will expire. So if you're listing this maybe like a month or two from now, and you try to click on 601 Lincoln Ave, you may have some troubles. But that's the first one.
601 Lincoln Avenue. So downtown in Louisville, there's a handful of gorgeous homes, some of which are new, some of which started as a historic property that was extensively remodeled. This is the latter. It was originally built supposedly in 1900. I always take that with a grain of salt because sometimes listing agents just they don't dig very deep, and you often see 1920. But when it's and that's the year apparently the courthouse burned and the records burned, but those records they're actually still records. People just pretend they're not. You can usually find out at the Carnegie Library the real age of the house, but that's for stuff in the city of Boulder. Louisville, the records are a little bit deeper and harder to find, but it was listed as 1900 construction, and it was extensively remodeled by DAJ Architects. The location is excellent. You are just stumbling distance to a couple of blocks away from downtown Louisville, which is adorable, doesn't have any of the big city issues that Boulder does, and it's relatively safe, although the whole town turns off at about 9 o'clock at night because it's not a destination for tourists, and there's no college students in Louisville. So Louisville is family friendly, but Louisville is not where you go out for late night partying, unlike downtown Boulder.
Yeah, I've been enjoying Louisville a little bit, the Crystal Springs Brewery. And you're right. It turns off right around like 9:30, which is so good for, I mean, you get like a full night's sleep. You still have a good night.
Go home.
Yeah.
These people have families. They have things to do the next day. They need to go to work. So Lincoln Avenue is fantastic. It backs to Louisville Elementary. And it's just a great spot. And this is a very tasty house. I think that the remodel is super well executed. It still has historic design elements. It has great outdoor living spaces, like on and on and on. I sold a house, I think I would say of this caliber, maybe 5 years ago, and I absolutely love that house. And our clients are so happy in that house that they didn't buy in Boulder. We originally were looking at homes in Newlands, and at the end of the day, they realized that not just the quality, but the size and the proximity to downtown Louisville was so much better than what they were seeing in Newlands and Mapleton Hill, and for half the price or less. And this is one of those houses. So
little ADU, it looks like, too. Yeah.
This is an excellent property all the way around. You can look at the eye candy by clicking the link for now. 3,600 square feet, 4-bedroom, 5-bath. It has only a 1-car garage, so that's the one thing that would keep me from buying it. I need to have 2, preferably 3, but I'll take 2 as a garage spaces. And most buyers at this price caliber, price level, will need to have a 2-car garage. So, like every house, there are compromises at all price points. But this one just is eye candy city, and I thought it was really, really nicely done. And no surprise, it sold very quickly. So it was listed at 2.325 in March. And it was under contract within 5 days, possibly under contract within 2, right? So the MLS says you don't have to change the status for 3 business days. So it could have been under contract almost immediately. And when it sold for $111,000 more than list. And there were no disclosed concessions. So congratulations to the buyer for locking it down. Clearly you don't care about cars because you tolerate the 1-car attached garage, but other than that factor, awesome house, fantastic transaction. The same house in Boulder would have been at least $1 million more in pretty much any neighborhood in Boulder. And the closer you got to open space or downtown, you could stack on another $500,000 to $1 million to get the same quality house.
Pretty easily.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, this is a really nice remodel. It looks fantastic, and the lighting is great. I want to stop raving on the location, but yeah, it's a great spot of Louisville, and I have to pitch Memory Square Park and Pool, where I used to work in high school. So
nice. I had a client years ago. This is like our second year in the business, and she grew up in Louisville, and one of her requirements was anywhere but Louisville. And I think it's because of her family history and the small town nature of that community that she did not want to live in Louisville as an adult, having grown up there. I also wonder if she just got
My
in
ex,
trouble
too.
a lot. Oh, your exes grew up in Louisville?
Like, this is like, I love it. It's a great spot, but because I grew up there, I don't ever want to go back. And I'm like, okay, you know.
I mean, small town USA is also where I grew up. Everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
People are in your business in a way that, small towns, right? Your parents find out what you're up to because then your friends' parents call them. It's just a different way of living, and I think it's actually a super attractive way of living. And even though prices have risen very high in Louisville in recent years, and it's hard to find a house in Louisville, it's a really worthy alternative to the city of Boulder. And we have sold many houses in Louisville after having dragged our clients to go look at something and then taken them to the historic downtown and been like, check out this downtown. Check out the restaurants. Check out the street fair is excellent. In the winter, there's stuff around the holidays. Like it's adorable and it's legit. It's not a make-believe town like Vail. They didn't make it like Disney World to look like something. It's legitimately a historic town, and it's only a few minutes from Boulder. And you're closer to the airport if you travel a lot.
Good point. Yeah, it's I could keep raving, but yeah.
And let me just say, I love Boulder. Okay, I live in Boulder, but at the same time, I recognize the magnetic attraction of Louisville, particularly for clients that are done with the bigger city issues that Boulder has and want to be in a better managed community that focuses on quality of life for its residents and less halo projects that Boulder typically gets distracted with.
Yeah. Final thing, I guess, for me at least, is there's a Facebook group called the 0027, and it's like Louisville's unofficial official community Facebook group.
Really?
And there's plenty of discussions about what Louisville is doing for its future, and also like local community events and all sorts. They have a separate sister group for like buying and selling and whatnot. But
can you invite me to it?
Yeah, for sure. That's where we used to, when we were lifeguards, we used to go and look at the people complaining about the pool as lifeguards. and that's how I got into it.
Laugh yourself silly.
A little bit.
Let's talk about our next one, also in Louisville. This property is at 987 Estes Way, and it's a 6-bed, 4-bath, 4,000 square feet, built in the 90s. So sort of a typical builder-style house built in the 90s, right? Like it has that classic 90s era architecture. But when you look at the interior photos, you see a house that, has a few updates, but, let's call it kind of dated. Like the kitchen clearly has had some touches since the 90s. It may still be the original cabinetry that was painted. I'm not sure without actually having been in the house. And I think I was in this house with our clients, but the memory of it is just sort of faded in with a bunch of the other houses we've seen that are similar.
I'm wondering if this one made a newsletter or something too.
It may have. I think it was a house that would have worked for our clients who are looking in Louisville, but it just didn't move the emotional needle for one reason or another. And you can see that reflected in its days on market and sale price, and also the ultimate time to close. So listed in March at 1.55 and took 2 weeks before a buyer locked it down, and it sold for just under the list price, token discount from list. I think it's a house that checks all the right boxes, good location. The one thing that I think is a little bit of a negative on it is that it's on a corner between Trail Ridge Drive and Estes Way. So you're going to get a bunch of traffic from Trail Ridge Drive, where there's a bunch of the fire rebuilds, and then right around, turning around your house. So I think that might have been why we decided it wasn't the right house for our clients. But I mean, it's okay. I'm kind of surprised it got to 1.55, but it is over 4,000 square feet, so that may have been the decisive factor. And it has a 3-car garage. It's just the location can't be, that side lot. It's something that has both positive and negatives to it, because you get traffic on the side. You also have to shovel all the way around, but you get a sense of openness because there's not a house directly on the left side of it. So it fits the budget. It's okay. It seems like it's priced right. It didn't get a bidding war, but it was a good 2-story house option if you're shopping for that sort of thing. And we do have a client looking for it. So if you have one like this, don't hesitate to reach out.
And credit where it's due, due, not to toot the Louisville horn again, but these like interior neighborhood intersections and things typically are give way only. They're not stop signs. And so if you are on a corner or a T or something, you're not hearing the cars like stop and accelerate quite as brutally. Can be a little bit quieter, but yeah.
I mean, that's a good point, but you also are worried about the car coming around the street when you're,
oh my gosh.
Your
and the kids playing in the street.
Kids playing in the street or on the driveway. You're worried about the car that's screaming around the corner driven by a teenager.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about our next one. Now we're going to move back into the city of Boulder, 5055 Ralston Street. And this is a 3,000 square foot, technically condo. It's a townhome, right? It's an attached duplex. I think it's a duplex, not a triplex. Let me make sure. It might.
And we are going to link Osmond's neighborhood video on Dakota Ridge.
No, it's a triplex.
Okay, tri-level or triplex.
No, it's a multiplex. I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4, but these are all attached in a row. So you could kind of call this a row home. Technically a condo, but really it's a townhome. 3,100 square feet, 3-bed, 5-bath, built in 2006 with a giant $960 a month HOA.
Yeah.
And this thing was originally listed in end of March for 1.349. It sold for a token discount of about $30,000, and it just closed on May 5th. The reason that I wanted to talk about this property is that this is the future. We're going to see a lot more dense development throughout all of the neighborhoods of Boulder, given the Boulder County, the comprehensive plan or comp plan, and the directionality of city council that is heavily progressive and wants to see a lot of development. So this is what the future looks like. Oh, yeah. And I'm not trying to instill fear. This is just a vision into what we're looking at. And the reason this is interesting is it sold for 1.32, which is a lot. Kind of for a townhome, it's kind of surprising, especially given that almost $1,000 a month HOA. It's a 3-bedroom property.
That HOA, yeah.
It's a 3-bedroom property with 5 bathrooms, and it was built in 2006. So when you look at the photos, it's an attractive home. Most buyers would prefer not to be in a townhome, even if it's an end unit. That's my personal experience working with buyers. For every buyer that wants a detached single-family house, for every buyer that's okay with a townhome style property, there's probably 10 that would prefer a single detached house with a bigger yard. So that's kind of the trade-off, but you can see the value here. So if you own a big lot, say in Fraser Meadows, or in any other place in Boulder that will soon be allowed to subdivide and develop, there's a good chance this is a benchmark for what you're trying to build on your lot. Is rather than have a single Martin Acres ranch on a 7,000 square foot or 7,500 square foot lot, you could have 2 of these duplexes. And if they're each worth 1.3, so now you're at 2.6, right? And the land value is worth 7, and you spend $1 million building these 2 duplexes, you still have significant upside in this project, $500,000 or so. So I think
we're seeing like these newer homes, and they're always super narrow. And it's nice to see the floor plan. It's literally the width of a 2-car garage. Looks like about 20 feet. So you're 20 feet wide and then 3 stories up. It's kind of the stacking of it. I didn't mean to completely derail, but it also looks really similar to the homes that are being built right now off Broadway and Violet in that southwest corner. So I think you're spot on, dude. Yeah.
How are you getting width of... Oh, I see the garage. Yeah. It is the width of... The whole house is the width of a 2-story garage. It's in the floor plan. So
right.
Yeah, these are classic narrow, tall. Denver is littered with townhome-style properties.
Some holiday. Yeah.
The new rules will allow this type of development. And I know that the fantasy is that all this density that's coming our way is going to reduce prices, but developers are not interested in reducing prices. They're interested in profit maximization. And profit maximization is aiming for... I cut
They're
out.
interested in what? Sorry, they're not interested.
So developers are not interested, whether it's a homeowner or it's, Markel, they're not in this business to increase affordable housing, right? That's one of the reasons we mandate affordable housing as a percentage of overall development. And for
Right.
an individual homeowner, they pay the lieu and fee.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why. And what developers of all kinds are interested in doing primarily is maximizing their own profit,
Oh, yeah.
right?
No, you just cut out. I didn't catch what you said. But
okay.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So profit maximization, this is what the future looks like. And 1.3 million aside is a $2.6 million property on a pretty small lot. I think that this is what we're likely going to see more of, and it doesn't necessarily mean prices are going to come down, but we do like the 1.3 million is solid middle market for Boulder, right? That is all day long. There are buyers looking for property in the 1.3, starting at 800 and getting to about 1.5. That's where most of the demand is for Boulder. So this is, if this is your benchmark, if you're thinking about developing your lot. You may want to wait a few years till all the rules pass, but this is the benchmark for what you're looking to build. And boy, even with $1,000 a month HOA, they sold within 2 weeks.
That's crazy to me. Yeah, I'm with you. And then, on the back end of that, like if you have yourself a larger single family home, they're not building those. So as we see like the proliferation of this style housing, I think we'll see decline in attached and dense housing prices, but still not in single family, kind of the older designs, right?
Yeah. So I compare this to like an apartment building where you're looking at 600 and 800 square foot apartments and you've got 15 of them in the building. Buyers are less attracted to that than something like this. That's a townhome that one side is open. And you're in a neighborhood that has parks, and you're not living with somebody above you. Somebody above you piece is what really
That's a
kills
big
it for
driver.
a lot of people. But even a shared wall can be a challenge. And I don't know. This has got like 5 units. I got to look up how many units in a row this is. Our office is so close to this. I think it might be 5 in the row.
It looks like there's 2 chunks, like 2 blocks with 5 each in them. I'm sure they'll have different addresses between them, but
I gotta look at the aerial now.
I lived in a townhome that was joined only by the garage, like garage on either side, and that was great. But
and that's
different.
a great design, 100%.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic design. People will tolerate that as well. So this is all educational for a buyer or an owner of land in Boulder, for how to maximize the potential of your property in the future.
Thinking ahead. Mm-hmm.
And I'm, as people know, I'm not actually in favor of densification of Boulder, but I also believe you have to live within the rules of what we've got. And
reality is reality.
If you own property that is developable, and a lot of South Boulder is with these dated ranches that haven't been touched in decades, this might be a way for you to maximize the value of the asset you already own, and you can claim progressive values by increasing housing. Hey, I'm helping solve the housing crisis, even while you're putting $1 million in your pocket doing it.
Good little virtue signal. Yep.
Yeah, it is a good little virtue signal. All right, I think that's enough about this townhome. Let's move on to our third property, fourth one.
What do you have for me?
Okay.
Us.
1836 Larkspur Lane. Boy, this is a Louisville heavy list today.
We called it Larks, but it's Lakes.
Lakespur, I know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Larks, but it's actually Lakespur. Sorry.
Yeah.
Lakespur Lane.
Doing the same.
Sold at 1.3 million, but it had originally been on the market last July at 1.45, and they cut the price in October, pulled it off the market. They had cut the price to 1.4 in October. Nothing happened. They pulled it off right before Christmas, literally Christmas Eve. Poor agent gets the message from the seller. Pulled a listing.
Ouch.
I'm out of here. And then they brought it back in April, so they waited 4 months. I don't know what happened in those 4 months. We can look at the full, now click the button and look at the old listing history. The old listing agent, let's look at their name. Yeah, they fired that agent. So the agent that listed it last year got fired. And then they hired a new agent. And they got it sold right away at 1.3. So the new agents had cut the price photographs are way better with. I mean, look at you could look this up later, Hamish, but the difference in the photography alone. Part of that might just be like the time of day was wrong, and this is the house in the second set of photos looks bright and airy. No
in the new one,
current
listing,
the new one, the current listing. So this is a 2013 Markel constructed home in the North End, right? That's what this is. And
Markel's a known name. Yeah.
Markel's the one that's developing right next to Anna's farm. Like, they are well known, and I think they're reasonably well regarded. I don't think that people think that they're junk. They think they're decent houses, and they've been in our community a long time. I don't know if they have a reputation of being amazing houses, but they're decent houses, and it's a regional builder, not like a big Pulte home kind of operation. This particular house is only 13 years old. And
I remember when they built this development. Yeah.
So what I want listeners to recognize is this is the classic model. 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. 3 of those bedrooms are on the upper, the guest room's in the basement. It has 3,600 square feet, which is reasonable for most people. The lot size is a little smaller, but not a postage stamp. And it has a 3-car attached garage. So functionally, this is going to fit a huge number of buyers. And the price is pretty sweet. I would say straight up the fairway, as you will say, as people say in golfing circles. The loomingness of the house to the right isn't great, but tolerable. It all depends on design, like how many of the windows of the house are facing that house. But all of the interior looks like classic Markel of the era. I don't think it has had updates in those 13 years, but it looks super tidy and clean. And
it's still holding its attractiveness, yeah.
Yeah, the value is 1.3 for a turnkey 13-year-old house that's family-friendly in a good location in Louisville. You're really close to Hecla Lake and open space trails. You're also not very far at all from downtown Louisville. You're in a quiet spot in the neighborhood. I mean, it just checks a lot of boxes. The one thing I'm not crazy about is how Sweet Clover Lane tees. So this is a lot of buyers that don't think about this, but you may get traffic that comes along Sweet Clover Lane at night and points a headlight at you. But more commonly, I think people are going to turn up Larkspur from White Violet and not go up Sweet Clover Lane. But I don't know. It's possible because from Hecla Way, Sweet Clover Lane is the arterial. So due diligence for this type of house would be to, on a Thursday or Friday night, hang out from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and see how busy this location is, because it might be a little busy, but ultimately this is a good benchmark for this type of house. And 1.3 seems like solid value. In fact, I wonder why we didn't show this to our Louisville shoppers. I think this would have worked for them.
Yeah, I wonder. Those
they didn't ask for it, so we didn't show it. But now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, boy, this is a great. I mean, okay, so it's great on the exterior, but the interior doesn't move the emotional needle. I think that's the reaction they would have had. Like, the kitchen is it's all okay. Like, it's one of these things where it meets the standard, but it doesn't have any emotional resonance at all. And the color pops are completely absent. It's sort of neutralized excessively on the inside.
I appreciate the wood grain on the exterior, but otherwise I think you're right. Like, it needs some personality out of it.
And our clients would have hated the back patio, right? Like, it's tiny back patio. It works, but it doesn't have that sense of openness and space that older homes have. And that's typical, right? The newer you go, typically the smaller the lots are. So there's a balance there that you have to find for what works for you.
Yeah.
All right, let me get our last one.
Those apartment buildings that kind of front that street and protect the neighborhood in a sense. When I had my internship at the other brokerage, I was watching them get built and really wanted one. It's like seeing it's coming full circle.
You don't want one anymore?
They didn't really appreciate much. They're a stylish place to live, but it doesn't look like they went up in price much. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Moosehead is our next one.
Moosehead is our next and last one, and this is Southwest Longmont, and this location has a lot of pluses. There's some great open space nearby, Lagerman Reservoir. There's trails throughout some of these neighborhoods that are great for walking on, and this is the heart of the cycling routes in North Boulder. So on any given Sunday, you're going to have hundreds of bicyclists going up North 63rd on Nelson Road, circling back. My wife doesn't like riding the diagonal, and I don't blame her, but there's lots of ways to avoid it on dirt. So there's all sorts of interesting gravel routes through this location or near this location. So that's one of the draws. And this particular house is part of the West Grange development. Mostly what we've seen in West Grange are smaller houses, patio style stuff. And this is much more toward the luxury end. And it was listed. So this is 5579 Moosehead. It was originally listed at 1.3, and that was back in March. And it went under contract after a little more than 2 weeks, and it sold for $1,269,000. So $30,000 below list, kind of a token discount. The people paid $1,212,175, very specific price, but that's what the builder charged them. We don't know if that included a lot of the updates, by the way. Like usually the builder base price, sometimes they don't actually give you the full price on the MLS, so that would require a little research. But it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. The market value of the house was $1,269,000, which is, kind of, we're in the same zone of prices as these other ones in Louisville, with some trade-offs in location. Like the problem with this location is you've got Vance Brand Airport, which I love to fly. I am a fan of general aviation, but you also have the Twin Otters from the sky jumping happening here. Yeah. So on a Saturday, this could be really annoying depending on the flight pattern. So what you want to do is stand outside on a Saturday on a beautiful afternoon and see if you're going to be annoyed by that Twin Otter flying, because it's not going to change. That's part of life in this location.
I'll say I'm on satellite view, and there's an airplane like 500 feet from the home, like that they caught on. Yeah.
So if we were advising our buyer, I would say, look, the trade-off for the $1.3 million buyer is if you go to Louisville, you're not going to hear all these planes at the same level. But with this particular property, you're about a mile from the airport, and there's a lot of air traffic. And if you're sensitive to that, you probably are better off choosing an older home that's in Louisville than a newer home that's in West Grange. And you also get the benefits of the historic downtown of Louisville. Although I will say, you're not far from Hygiene, which has a couple of options, it's kind of agriculturally focused. And this house, from a design perspective, is way superior to the last one we just talked about on Lakespur, right? Like, look at the design of the interior. It's just like, it's refreshing. It doesn't feel dated at all. This is brand new, and the design has big open windows, brand new everything. It's fetching, right? This is a very attractive contemporary home in so many ways. So as always, there are trade-offs in real estate. Is the house worth the Twin Otter skydiving noise? Do you care about being in proximity to Longmont versus Louisville? For some people moving to our area, they don't even know the differences between these communities. But there are differences, right? Longmont is a much bigger city.
They're genuine. Yeah.
It's almost the same size as the city of Boulder, but it's better managed, I will say. It has a great historic downtown. It has, the whole, Old Town Longmont is like Mapleton
They're
Hill
doing really
quality.
well with that.
It's gorgeous, especially the west side. So it's hard to go wrong with Longmont, but it's a different feel than Louisville, and it's worth taking the time to visit both communities if you're shopping here and see this trade-off back to back. Way better house in terms of design aesthetic. I can't speak to the build quality, but also maybe not as great of a location, particularly if you're sensitive to airplane noise. So worth a visit to West Grange if you're relocating to Boulder.
Yeah, check that out. Good pick too. I got no notes.
You got nothing else to add on that one?
Nothing else to add. I think you really hit it.
If you haven't seen something in West Grange, Hamish, you should probably go out there and look at some property. It's an interesting development, and typically there's a lot of value, but you're also a little further from anything retail, and you're also subject to the airplanes.
I went skydiving at the airport, but I've got a little bit of fuel to burn. I'll go check out West Grange.
Okay. I jumped out of a plane from that airport too.
Yeah. Good time. Okay,
shameless self-promotion. This is going to be really quick. We have
Our favorite
awareness
client.
of. I happen to own a mini warehouse out in East Longmont that is currently vacant. And if you'd like to if you need a mini warehouse, this could fit RVs or classic cars. It has a little clubhouse. It's not designed for manufacturing operations. You can't technically run a business out of this place, but you can run administrative functions, and you could store things, and you can work on your personal vehicles. That's fine. And the clubhouse is cool. So this is a large space, I think 20 by 40, Hamish, right? Something like that. You could fit a city bus in this building. It's vacant, and it comes with the world's best landlord. It also has heat and electric, of course.
Two 20-volt outlets, electric heat. Yeah.
Currently on the market at only $1,400 a month, but for you, special price. Call me directly, and we'll work on it.
Yeah, Osmond can be contacted at houseeinstein.com. And I don't know what kind of models you're thinking, Oz. I don't think I have enough junk to store there, but if you were storing something and I was storing something and maybe somebody else was storing something, I don't know what we could do.
I mean, look, this is if you are into classic collector cars, if you have hobbies that your partner or spouse doesn't want you doing at home, or you like to escape and go to the clubhouse, this is like not that expensive place to store your exotic,
your toys,
your RV, your toys, and your tools. It's secure. It's a great location. And again, comes with a fantastic landlord. So don't hesitate. Okay, let's talk about the news, Hamish.
Great. So this one I first saw on Instagram. And to be honest, when I started looking it up to even find like a reputable link, it was more difficult than I thought. But we finally got there. It's from redfin.com, or Redfin News. And it says here there are 630,000 more home sellers than buyers, the biggest gap on record. Nationally, of course. And Osmond, you looked at it and
The article says 46% more sellers in the United States in February than buyers. And yeah, the largest gap in records dating back to 2013. So 13 years of records.
Oh.
Right? Not forever. And that's 50% more sellers than buyers across the entire United States. And then they also talk about how the absolute number of buyers has fallen to historic lows. They've got some really interesting charts that are interactive, which are kind of cool. You can see how buyers number 1,359,219, but sellers measure 1,900,000. So first of all, there's always more. Any given month, there's more sellers than buyers, right? There's more listings than there are buyers in the market, so that shouldn't shock you as an article. What economists have said is a healthy balance between buyers and sellers is about a 20% absorption rate, or 5 to 6 months of inventory.
Yeah, so, month's supply is a metric you hear a lot, right?
So I'm not sure how well this article takes into account month's supply, but if you do dig into the article, it then goes into the differences between the regions. So take their data with a grain of salt, first of all.
Oh, and now, national.
And especially nationally. And then start to look at the regional markets. And it says the strongest buyers markets are in the South, with Miami being a place where there are 163% more sellers than buyers. And the strongest sellers markets are in the North, with Newark, New Jersey having 31% fewer sellers than buyers. That's crazy. My sister just sold a house in New Jersey and bought a house, and her stories of bidding wars were kind of shocking compared to what we're seeing here. But if you flip through this, they do have the Denver Metro in here. And they say the balance of power is with the buyers, 40% more sellers than buyers. I would agree in general that the market, it does favor buyers, but not all price ranges and locations. Under $1.2 million or $1.3 million in Boulder County, it's still very, very competitive to find an attractive house. But we have noticed a bit of a slowdown. So that's anecdotal, and when the month of May rolls out, maybe next week we'll dive in and look at absorption rates, because we can do that in real time. But we can't tell closings until the month is completed. So we'll dig into that next week. But I think a super interesting article with a lot of caveats.
Yeah. It's seeing New Jersey and then my uncle's in South Dakota, like nowhere South Dakota, and he's talking about there's some bidding wars out there, which is really interesting and odd to see. Yeah, funky.
So the biggest problem in real estate is the whisper market data. And the whisper market data comes from people that may have experienced the bidding war. And so from their perspective, the market is bidding war central. And then on the other end of the spectrum are the sellers that listed their house too much and have been chasing the market down for the last year. And their perspective is, boy, the market's dead. And so you get these pieces of intel from individuals
like
that are
anecdotal and
anecdotal, and it's completely irrelevant. And what matters is what the market is doing relative to your specific situation, whether you're selling or buying, and what are the unique factors that are affecting the marketability of your property if you're selling, and how do you make your buy situation the most advantageous you can get given the circumstances, right? And that might mean that you just have a seat at the bidding table. Okay. Or it might mean, hey, in your price range and location, like if you're above $3 million, 90% of the inventory is just sitting there. So you have so much opportunity to leverage a better deal. And now is the time. We're into mid-May. This is when sellers who have been on the market a few months are suddenly looking down into the mirror of disappointment, and they're much more negotiable. So don't believe an agent that tells you at any price point that it's all bidding wars or it's all stagnant inventory. You have to go into the data and see houses yourself and experience what's going on in that location and price range and property type to better understand how to take that information and make it actionable for you.
The answer is always, it depends.
Right. As always, it depends.
Of course it depends. It depends.
Okay, next
this
piece
one,
of news.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I'll read it, and then I want to hear your thoughts first. Boulder eases height restrictions for museums, theaters, and art venues. This is from the Boulder Reporting Lab, which we love, and they say City Council has approved a suite of land use changes, which include allowing a broader range of businesses and organizations to seek permission to build three-story buildings up to the city's 55-foot height limit. So they're easing restrictions, and they're encouraging museums, theaters, and art venues to go ahead and apply to get a building built up to the 55-foot height limit. So that does require site review under current rules, and the exemptions...
That'd be solar limits? Or...
The exemptions were generally for pitched roof or equipment clearance to allow to go over 35. But clearly council's signaling, hey, we're okay with taller buildings, but they need to be museums, theaters, and art venues. Hint, hint, BMOCA is building in North Boulder.
Yeah,
hint,
good
hint,
catch.
There's a 2,500 seat theater that has been applied for and is moving forward in East Boulder. So this is I think in line of creating more venues for Sundance, increasing the opportunities to build more things that have community and cultural benefit to our town.
Mm-hmm. When I just read the headline, I thought just they were scrapping height rules altogether. And I like that there's height restrictions, and Boulder is relatively small and whatnot, especially from like a landscape point of view when you're coming over 36 looking towards the canyon. But man, it would be so cool to see a big old skyscraper right nestled up against the foothills. Like a Space Needle type of thing, like almost comparable on height to the Flatiron. Could look really neat, kind of cyberpunky.
There's a Reddit video.
Hot take.
There's a post on Reddit in the Boulder subreddit where somebody shared a vision of what Boulder looks like in 50 years. Mm-hmm. It is stomach churning.
I don't think 50.
I have to say.
It's got to be more than 50. Yeah.
Maybe it's. Well, you see that video? Have you seen
I didn't
that video?
see it. But if they're.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to see if I can find it for you just so we can get your live reaction, Hamish.
What if we have like the Burj Khalifa next to the Flatirons? Like something like that. The Optiv building in Denver, that's a pretty striking building. It looked kind of nice, juxtaposition against the foothills.
I mean, what's really clear in this video is that the prompt they gave AI was that we want to see a future city with lots of walkability, but high density, lots of cycling, but high density, and make sure that you can see the Flatirons from everywhere.
But high density.
And it is such a make-believe fantasy video. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, please do. And I'll link it if we can.
Crazy.
If we find it.
As a possibility of things that just cannot exist like this.
I'll just look up Future of Boulder Reddit, maybe.
It's in. I think I saw it in the subreddit.
Is it like an AI kind of rendering type of deal?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally AI. Yeah. I'm looking for top videos this week. Maybe it wasn't a top video. I saw it in the last couple days. Well.
Yeah, I'm not finding it too quickly. But if we find it while this podcast getting edited and processed, we'll link it in the description for y'all.
All right, let's move on to our last two topics, which I think are actually very closely related. The first is that the S&P is, I mean, it's off of its ultimate highs, but it's still really frothy. And you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with real estate? And it has a lot to do with real estate at the high end. So the real estate at the high end tends to, it absolutely is influenced by stock market highs. And as we continue to set new highs, certain individuals are going to look to pull capital out of the equities markets and put it into something more substantive or real brick and mortar real estate. And so the high end has been moribund for a long time in Boulder, especially above 3. And as you move up in price, the more slowly it transacts. And so as we see the stock market continuing to set new highs, it should be a positive for the sellers trying to liquidate their real estate holdings. Buyers right now still have a lot of selection here in Boulder, but what I've heard anecdotally from the Bay Area, where we have clients and friends, is that there's so much AI money in the Bay Area that the real estate market's crazy. Once again, the real estate market is behaving in some ways like it was post-COVID. And so will that start to filter out to other markets like Boulder?
I mean, we're kind of techie.
We are very techie. We have Google, we have Apple, we have lots of tech companies here.
Seagate? Yeah.
But we still also have, I think, we also have a lot of negative news from our science labs and our research institutions and our educational institutions, because a lot of those are under attack. And so uncertainty and fear tend to lock people in place when it comes to investing and when it comes to large real estate allocations, right? Big purchase decisions or investment decisions. When there's fear and uncertainty, people just hit the pause button. So far, we're not seeing that in our local market. But it would not surprise me that once the Iran war is gone, once fuel prices come back down and the fear over a high oil price driven recession goes away, and particularly as Trump exits, right, from his political position, which is going to happen eventually. We still have another. My God, is this just his first year?
We've got 2 more years. This is his second.
This is his second. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost halfway through. Okay, This is that delusional optimism. We're almost halfway through.
The glass is half full. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to like him, but he has been very pro-business. So I think that eventually the high end is going to start to recover. We've had several years of down prices, and just like the stock market is setting new highs, as it continues to set new highs, there's a really good chance that we're going to start to see more certainty in business decisions. More confidence in the employment market, as it's becoming more and more clear that AI is not resulting in a massive jobs wipeout. Yes, companies are not hiring as much as they were, which affects a lot of younger people, but those younger people weren't buying $3 million houses to begin with. So I think that as it becomes more clear that AI is going to fuel a productivity expansion for the existing workforce, that profitability is likely to filter out for a lot of tech employees, and quite a few of them live here. So, and it's not just tech; it's the non-tech companies, the non-Mag 7 companies that are going to start to realize productivity advantages that are coming from AI. That's what is fueling.
Probably a lot of administrative tasks that they could use it for.
We use it constantly, and we're just a tiny little company. So we can adopt new systems.
Yeah.
We can adopt new systems very quickly. But larger companies are slower to adopt, but eventually they will. They have to, because the smaller companies are going to eat their lunch. So this competitiveness in the long run is good, but I think it will. There's like two different charts going on, right? There's this productivity chart. There's fear and uncertainty. Like there are all these factors that are playing in, and real estate is not immune to these forces. So this week, Trump and company, this is our last news story, are in China, in Beijing, and I anticipate there being a number of pro-business announcements that come out of this week of meetings with our largest trading partner, the second largest economy in the world. We are our largest competitor, or it's our frenemy, right? So they're going to have conversations about
intrinsically
Taiwan,
linked. Yeah.
where still 90% of semiconductors are manufactured, but the U.S. is looking to offshore a lot of that out of Taiwan. There'll be negotiations over chips, and there'll be trade deals. That's what Trump is all about, like him or not. And so, and again, I'm going to reiterate.
I mean, the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure thing was all Biden, but you know.
Okay. Well, this is the moment I'm going to reiterate, as I do almost every podcast.
Right. You have to when it comes to this.
I'm an independent. So I'm not trying to prove I'm a more Democrat and progressive than my neighbor here in Boulder. And I'm not going to pretend to not be critical of the administration for a lot of reasons. They deserve criticism. But you also have to acknowledge they're very pro-business. And they're likely to going to come out of this week of meetings with their cadre of CEOs on Air Force One with a bunch of trade deals, which are likely going to cause the stock market to continue to move upward. We'll see, provided that Iran eventually is going to get solved. It's not going to. It can't be the Cuban
fingers
Missile.
crossed, dude. Yeah.
We don't want it to be the Cuban Missile Crisis, but Cuba doesn't manufacture oil, and Asia depends on Iranian oil. So it's just a matter of time. This has got to get solved. For the way our
and that's one of the things they'll be talking about, right? So.
That's one of the things. So stay tuned for what comes out of China. But my prediction is significant trade deals are going to be announced because these things are pre-negotiated. You don't fly the president and 50 of his CEO buddies to China if they didn't have something to come back to the United States with that looks really positive. And that these negotiations have been going on for months to iron out what the deal's going to be. And Trump is going to want credit for having made the deals. So he will be making the deal. But the deal was already made. It's already baked in. And it's mostly a show of economic force. Why else would you bring all these CEOs with you? So I don't know.
I'm staying in the delusional optimism. I'm optimistic and hopeful that it benefits more than the businesses of the individuals who went there. I could very much see it stay to Mag 7 or the industry leaders that went to China, and that's as good as it gets, and it just leads to more consolidated business empires, right? Like good for business, yeah.
Well, hopefully also good for sustainability, right? China is the #1 manufacturer of solar panels in the world. China is manufacturing more lithium than anybody else in the world. China is the world's manufacturing factory, right? We need to work in a positive ways, and I think we're, as a society and as a world, we are moving in the right direction, and AI has so much promise. And yes, okay, I admit this is delusionally optimistic, and I'm going to say
keep that energy going. Yeah.
That for most of my professional career, I have adopted an attitude of cautious optimism. And why are people cautiously optimistic? They're cautiously optimistic because they don't want to look stupid, right? They don't want egg on their face. But the reality is that even though we've sort of made fun of it, delusional optimism creates a mindset for looking for what's right with the world. And how do you increase happiness? How do you serve our clients better? How do we build a better and happier company? That's what we care about. And so being delusionally optimistic is, I think, really important. acknowledging that there might be a degree of delusion. That's fine. But when Steve Jobs did delusional optimism, they called it what? His force field effect. And I think it's actually the right attitude.
Actually,
in business, and it's the right attitude in life. It doesn't matter what cards you're being dealt. You need to come back to delusional optimism and focus on a positive future for ourselves, our lives, our friends, our communities, the clients we serve, the colleagues we work side by side with, even when they screw up and tell us there's no defects in the house. Our delusional optimism
Nothing to worry
is we hope they learn to disclose, and we hope they learn to advise their seller to not be so silly and ignore obvious problems that any seasoned agent is going to pick up on.
Yeah. There's I think honestly, like, that's almost a damn good note to like end the podcast on, because you brought it delusional optimism and then bookended it. But yeah, I'm with you.
In comedy, it's called a callback.
Yeah, callback, or I mean, dude, that's just a great conclusion statement. But we have more to go on. Yeah.
Well, let's move to our carve-outs, our last segment. And Hamish, I think you should lead with your carve-out.
Yeah.
All about Standley Lake.
Mine's just a pretty light
D?
one.
Is the D silent?
Dude, I wish I like to sometimes pronounce it just as I go. But the D really messes me up, and I'll like try to make a post about it, and autocorrect will be like, there's no D there. And so it'll autocorrect it without me noticing, and then I get smart ass comments of being like, oh, you misspelt it. And I'm like, yeah, I sure did. Egg on my face. But Standley Lake is a pretty dang large reservoir. I've talked about it before in previous podcasts and stuff, but most notably, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's summer, and it is gorgeous outside. It smells so good. The wildflowers, everything's going on, and there's this huge recreational body of water near me. So these like afternoon walks to go to Standley. I've got a neighborhood trail out there, and it's gorgeous. It's pretty well stocked, though I haven't caught squat the past few times that I've gone fishing there, but it's solid for fishing, and I think this weekend I'm going to see about getting the kayaks out onto it too. So you're restricted. You can't have like a gasoline motor. I think you can have like a 75 watt trawler motor if you did want to have something motorized, but otherwise it's sailing and paddling. And it's just I mean, it's a gorgeous little spot. There's like bald eagles nesting there. There's a bunch of other birds that I'm not educated on their species, but there's a little bird island, they call it, and it's really well maintained. And yeah, I'm stoked that it's warm. I'm stoked that it's pretty, and I'm kind of excited to get out and recreate.
Well, I'm reading the Wikipedia entry for Standley Lake. Have you read it?
No, probably not.
I
know I did a while ago.
It reads like Water Wars over how. So Standley Lake was created for irrigation, right? So it's water storage for irrigation for farmland. Mm-hmm. And boy, there have been lawsuits all over this thing. But interestingly, the paragraph that I think is relevant here is that Standley Lake was historically affected by runoff from the Rocky Flats plant via Woman Creek, which drains about 35% of the site. Contaminants, including plutonium, tritium, and nitrates, were released between 1952 and 1989, while most plutonium settled in creek beds and reservoir sediments due to its low solubility. Concerns about contamination led to the construction of the Woman Creek Reservoir in 1996 to intercept runoff and protect Standley Lake. Surface water monitoring followed closure of the plant, conducted by entities such as the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and local municipalities, indicates that risk to drinking water remains minimal under existing management measures. So, did you use your Geiger counter when you were out there fishing?
It's an alpha emitter. My Geiger counter don't pick that up. So yeah, I mean, my mom is like, Standley Lake, you know, if you eat the fish, you'll start glowing and all sorts of stuff. But to my practical knowledge, unless something's seriously stirring up the sediments and like the riverbeds and things, that stuff's not really getting stirred up. And because it's an alpha emitter, it doesn't really penetrate much. There you can make it's called a Wilson cloud chamber, and essentially visualize the alpha particles, and like a piece of paper will stop it. So to me, and this is not health advice, but I think it's totally fine. And then there's Westminster Water gets the Standley Lake water quality independently tested, and you can go view the results of that. And like, they're honest; they'll show trace amounts of plutonium and uranium and whatnot. And if you want to go crazy, there's the hormetic theory about radiation exposure and levels that up to a certain point it can be healthy for you. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I will say the Chimney Hollow Reservoir, which was just completed, had its first initial fill. That's the one up by Carter Lake in Loveland. And they found uranium at their in-site quarry. And so rather than fill the entire thing, they did an initial fill, and now they're watching to see how much of the dam wall leaches into the initial fill site.
You lost me when you said they're honest, Hamish, because we're talking about the government here.
Whose government?
Government in the United States, and probably all countries, but definitely here in the United States, has a long history of hiding and obfuscating and denying the environmental impacts of our past. And often the communities that suffer the most from those environmental impacts are communities of low income and color. And so I personally would not trust anything the government says when it comes to environmental matters. Mm-hmm. And I would assume the worst and hope for the best, right? Like, and Standley Lake, look at that plume map from the fires and ask yourself, are you okay? Like, is it okay? And I know you're confident it's fine, but I personally feel like
I would not live at Candelas or any of that area, right? And then Westminster too, right? If you want to, not even to stand up for them, but maybe as an interesting aside, they pulled out of the Rocky Mountain Greenbelt project because of the development on Rocky Flats. Right, so Westminster, who also gets the water from Standley Lake, is pulling out of a development that directly goes on top of the Rocky Flats site. Yeah. Irony? Hypocrisy? I don't know.
Yeah. All right, I think that's. I think we've covered your Standley Lake fishing trip.
Yeah. Maybe I'll start eating the fish, and I'll let you guys know if I start glowing.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me know if you cook the fish, or if you make fish dishes that particularly are named after the radioactivity of the.
Yeah. This one is U-235, and then this one is polonium, 2310. No.
I mean, that would be hilarious to name your drinks and food menu items after
like isotopes.
Nuclear radiation, isotopes, things that remind people of the radiation. I think it probably wouldn't be popular if you did that.
Probably not.
All right, so I'll talk about my Carveout. And
please.
We didn't have a podcast last week because I was dirt biking in Moab with a group of friends. There's a doctor out of Michigan that organizes this trip every year, and it was probably 20 or so people, maybe 25 people, mostly dudes that are dirt biking. And it's older, the crowd, and we're exploring hundreds of miles of trails on BLM land, and it's just one of the most spectacular parts of our country. If you haven't had an opportunity to spend time in Moab, I strongly recommend it. It's only about 6 hours away, and even after 22 years of living in this location, I still love going to Moab. It just, the desert speaks to the soul, and thanks to the wonders of Starlink, I can stay in touch with the home office, write offers, negotiate deals, and work independently because Hamish can do showings while I'm out of pocket, or other members of our team. And that is just, I don't know, it's just that I feel very privileged and lucky, and also no major injuries other than, scraped ankle. But boy, riding a little, a 500cc dirt bike for 600 miles, my arms, my feet are vibrating. Real work. Yeah. It is something, it is physically exhausting. I joked when we were all hanging out by the fire, I'm like, why do I choose these vacations that are like,
you need a vacation from.
Exhausting. Yeah. Like I literally would fall asleep within seconds of hitting the pillow, and sleep a solid 7 to 8 hours, which is really rare for me.
That's pretty outstanding.
So done. Yeah. So all of that was part of the Moab trip. Got to test drive or do a shakedown run on the toy hauler, which did great, and all's well that ends well. So thanks everybody who missed me last week for your patience. Sorry I wasn't here, and we decided to postpone the podcast, but every once in a while you got to get out and play, and that was what last week was about.
Yeah, well worth it, I think, and some solid pictures on their on the gram. So Moab's only 6 hours away.
It's 5.5.
I am underutilizing these road trips, man.
You're driving too slow.
You know that's not true. Alrighty.
You want to do
Well,
our
it's good to
wrap-up?
be back. Yeah, folks. We are now, give or take the 5-minute break we took at about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, or 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it's showing it's good to be back. It's good to be reading the comments and feedback and reactions to the topics that we're discussing. And we're keeping it local and really having a lot of fun with this podcast and watching it grow. So thank you very much for being a listener, for being a follower. And if you'd like, check out what else we are up to. Of course, we're real estate agents and we operate in the Boulder and Denver metro area, so feel free to reach out for that. But yeah, check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. We're all over the place. TikTok too. House Einstein, wherever you go. And yeah, we love to see the comments, the engagement. It's been a lot of fun. So thanks for joining us. And if you want our take on some active listings, check out houseeinstein.com. We've got a newsletter there, and it's the only place we can dish about active things. It's our little captive newsletter. So thanks so much and take care.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.